Jonathan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited to talk to you about The Obvious Choice. You can see my book is very well loved. Um,
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for being here today.
I got to get you to send me a picture of that book with all those tags. I
I
some
will.
some people are like, oh, I don't want to tell you that I dog-eared your book or that I wrote in your book. I'm like, oh no, hell no, bro. Like,
Yeah.
show me a picture of all of those dog ears
Oh,
and tags, and I want you to
ab-
write in the margin. So that's a beautiful thing to me.
absolutely. I can show you. I've done so much like
Oh yeah, you got to send me
highlighting,
lots of
writing.
pictures of that. That's beautiful.
It's the
It's a
best way to
pleasure to be
learn.
here, and thank you for. I'm starting my day with a coffee. You've already had dinner guests come and gone,
I
so I
have.
appreciate this.
I have. So yeah, so thank you so much. I do appreciate it. And I'm keen to talk to you today because we've talked before I hit record, because we've got this, we call it the Better Business Book Club. And
Hmm.
of course, we're doing The Obvious Choice. And so when I mentioned to the members of the book club that you and I would be having a chat, they were really, really happy to hear that. And I know that when I ask you questions about the book or your thoughts about business, they're absolutely going to love it because we've taken a deep dive into some of these ideas. So I thought I
Hmm.
might ask you questions about some of the ideas you talk about in your book. And I wanted to start by firstly congratulating you because you begin this book really talking about mindset
Mm.
and understanding achievement and being a high
Yeah.
achiever, and what does that mean? Can you tell me, why do you think that well, firstly, why did you put that at the start of the book, and why do you think addressing mindset up front is so critical?
Books are funny how they evolve.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that was certainly not the first chapter of the book. Was certainly not planned to be in the book when I sold the book to the publisher. In
Uh-huh.
fact, that chapter came out of me writing an introduction. Um,
Oh,
that chapter was actually originally going to be the introduction to the book, and something happens sometimes when I write, not often enough, perhaps, but where I kind of get into a flow with it, and I don't really, even if I was writing it to be one thing, I'm like, I don't know what this is going to become, but there's something here, and so I just go with it, right, and
right.
figure it out later. And what happened with that was going to be a very short part of an introduction, or part of the introduction was I finished it and I sent it to my editor and to my agent and to a couple of people at the publishing team. I was like, I don't know what this is, but I
Uh-huh.
really like it. Could this be the introduction? And they said, nah, that's not the introduction, but that needs to go in the book. And so from there, we kind of started to figure out what it was, and it was going to be chapter 3. And then I was like, no, this is actually the strongest chapter. And also, book notary stuff. I look at
Mm-hmm.
books almost as like an inverted pyramid type thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I look at everything like that, even with business. You always have to sell the next step. And
Mm-hmm.
so to get somebody to buy a book, you've got to sell them on the book. That could be through relationships and trust, title, cover. To be
Right.
honest, I think the title cover of The Obvious Choice probably doesn't do a good enough job, but we'll talk about that later. But you got to sell somebody to open up the book. You've got to sell somebody to come into your store, whatever, right?
Right.
And then you've got to sell them to take a look at the thing. And then you've got to sell them to take a bit more of a look at the thing. And every step of the way, you actually have to think of it as whatever I've earned in the past is irrelevant. I have to
Mm-hmm.
earn the next step. I have to earn the next click. I have to earn the next conversation.
Right.
And I think of books that way as well. And so, all of this to say, much of the reason why that's the first chapter, I think it lays up the book well, but it's
Yeah.
also the shortest.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
um, it gets the reader moving quickly with a lot of momentum because it's only about 1,300 words, if I remember properly, versus the other chapters that are more than double that size.
Right.
And so we felt like it fit really well at the beginning because of the mindset bit, because it helps you perhaps look at yourself and say, hey, there's maybe something different here that applies to me beyond just like a tactical business book.
Right.
But also, it's short and it gets you moving quickly and um, almost like a checklist, like an analog checklist. Like, all right, I'm in it now. versus a book that starts with a 7,000 word chapter where you kind of,
Yeah.
it's a commitment at the start before
Yeah.
perhaps as an author I've earned the commitment.
Yeah. I have to admit that when I first read the chapter, I went, okay, this is interesting. Not quite what I was expecting in chapter one,
No.
but as I read the rest of the book, I thought it was brilliant to put it up front because I think, particularly if you're talking to sole traders, micro business owners who are
Yeah.
so connected to their business, we can't separate church and state. We are who we are. And I
Yeah.
think it's great to be able to address that and what we bring into a business. And we have somebody in our group, Liz, who is a journaler. So she does
Mm.
journaling. She's actually a psychotherapist. I think she's connected with you on LinkedIn. I think a couple of them have done that, which is
Yeah.
lovely. And so she had a couple of questions that she wanted to ask you
Oh,
tonight in
from a
this interview.
journaler. Okay, I'm scared.
Yeah.
All right, let's go. Hit it. Hit me with it, Liz.
Well, she wanted to ask you about I'm just having a look at it here, about the
Mm-hmm.
bug book exercise. And I have to say, Liz has done that exercise
Mm.
exceptionally well, and she shared that with us.
Cool.
So, um, and she wanted to know. Well, she was starting at that point, and then saying that she also understands that you repeatedly journal about and review your client notes, and that kind of led you to finish your first book when you were reflecting on the work that you were doing with your clients. And so
Mm.
she wanted to ask, what kind of journal or notebook do you currently keep now, and what sort of things go into it?
It's funny because I don't consider myself a journaler at all.
Oh,
But I guess that idea of like how Ignite the Fire, my first book, was written, it was a journal of sorts. I never thought of it that way until you just mentioned it. Um, I don't have a journal now, is the answer.
oh,
I've
okay.
never had a journal, is the answer. Uh, the bug book is the only thing that I do. Um,
Uh huh.
and
And do you
and I
still
do
do
it when
that?
I need to. I
Oh,
do it when
right.
I need to. I do it when I'm feeling very lost and when I feel like I have kind of lost my way a little bit. That's a really nice exercise to immediately get me on track and check in with myself. But beyond that, no, I don't. I don't journal. I mean, my writing is my journaling. I mean, that
Ah,
book that you're reading is my journal. Um, the next book that I'm coming out with is called Unhinged Habits. That comes out next January. That
uh-huh.
is a journal. Um, the process of writing for me, books, is the process of me trying to become a better human. The way that
Uh-huh.
I talk about it to people is I say, um, I consider myself to be more an explorer than anything else. I try a lot of things. I visit a lot of places. Perhaps not with enough thought going into them. Really,
Mm.
call it the fuck around to find out approach to life. That's kind of how I
Yeah.
approach life. And then, like, occasionally I stumble upon something that seems to work, that is perhaps different than other ways that it's done or that I've seen it taught. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then I look backwards and create a post rational narrative and say, okay, how can I simplify this and make sense of it and perhaps replicate it? And
And
that's often what the books become.
what do you, Liz is going to ask me this. So what do you
Mm,
do to capture those questions and thoughts? Do you write that down physically? Do you have
mm.
Google Docs? What do you do to capture and keep that thinking going?
So I used to just email to myself notes all the time.
Ah,
And
that's
that was a mess, but like it worked fine, but it was a mess. What I do now is I use Trello. I'm not saying that I
yeah,
particularly love Trello, but I use Trello. It works, whatever. And I have a number of boards. Basically, every book
yeah,
that I think I might write at one point, which is basically every topic that I care about that I'm thinking about, fatherhood, fitness, how to
yeah,
spend money well. Like these are all things that I want to talk
yes,
about a little bit more. Um, and then anytime that I have a thought or an interesting conversation with somebody or anything that I want to capture, what I'll do is I'll voice dictate or I'll type a note really quick to myself. And then I
Uh-huh.
just email it to Trello. And the way that my Trello is set up is anything that I email to my Trello email
Right.
immediately
Yep.
gets captured in what I just call the gathering hole, which
Right.
is just one board that just everything gets emailed into.
Yes.
And then what I'll do is I'll go in there and I'll just move them to different
Yes.
places. Then I usually have quite a bit. This is
Wow.
the probably the next book that I'm going to start to write. And what this is me going through the Trello board that has been captured over the last like 5 years
Wow, that's
on that
great. Yep.
topic. And it's basically taking everything and all of the ideas and all of the references and all of the quotes and whatever,
Yes.
putting them down on cue cards, starting to organize them into themes, and just letting things settle and seeing what I have. And that's how I make sense of it all.
Yep. Terrific. That's a great system. X, I can relate. I use Evernote in a
Mm,
very, very similar way. But Trello is beautiful too because it's quite visual, isn't it, really? And there's a lot of
yeah,
flexibility in moving things around.
that's why I like it.
Mm,
I
mm,
use Evernote a different way. So, I like reading stuff a lot. I like coming across particularly like interesting articles or Reddit conversations or whatever. But it often happens when I'm procrastinating doing something else that I want to be doing, that I'm procrastinating from doing, but hate myself for procrastinating from doing on the net. And so, and I also hate reading on a screen. I need stuff
right.
printed.
Yeah, same here.
Um, And so what I did with my Evernote is I set it up so that if I just click the Evernote button on my computer, it
Yeah,
automatically clips a simplified version of that web page and puts it into a folder in my Evernote that's called
yeah,
To Read Later.
yeah, yeah.
And then I do it now because I don't have an assistant anymore. But what happened was I used to have an assistant when I built this first, and her name was Bobby. Her job was to each week I had two different slots for reading,
Uh-huh.
and she actually printed everything out of the To Read Later
Oh,
file for me,
really?
and she'd walk into my office and hand them to me just
Wow.
before that meeting slot.
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so that was a way that I kind of organized, like, oh, there's this interesting article that I don't want to lose on the internet, but I don't want to read it now because I'm doing this other thing. It was just like a quick click, and then everything
Mm,
else happened. That worked really, really nicely too. And I still use
good.
that to clip it, and then I just print
Yeah,
it
that's a
myself
great
because.
system. Yeah, I love that web clipper service. It's fantastic with Evernote. It's
And
brilliant.
that it simplifies the web page, so you remove, it doesn't work perfectly, but it removes most of the junk.
Yeah. So, yeah, great. All right, that's good. Well, Liz will be happy with that answer. So,
I don't know, am I a
uh,
journaler? I don't think so.
I think you are, though. I think you are. I don't
Oh
think you
man.
need to have a traditional book, do you? You just need to be reflective in some way and
No, I
capturing
mean,
that.
the process of writing and trying to educate other people about something is such a selfless process for me
Uh huh.
that it's just, it's stuff I want to better understand about myself.
Ah,
They say when
okay.
you write books, don't write for yourself, write for other people. Nah, I write for myself.
Yeah. But everyone
Um,
gets the benefit, though.
that's the hope.
Yeah, that's
That's
great.
the
That's
hope. I mean,
exciting.
if they sell well, that's the hope. But the key thing about that is that at least it's a win if they don't, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, true. Very true. That's a nice way to frame it. So let me ask you, let's come back to the book and talk about some of these topics. Something that we
I
spent
like,
quite
can
a
I
lot of,
just make a note that you have
yeah,
Snoopy behind you and I have Calvin
I
and
do.
Hobbes behind me? And
Ah,
that's like pure 90s, like
yeah,
cartooning fodder. And, sorry, go on.
it's true.
Did
um,
we just become best friends? Okay, go on.
um, so something we spent a lot of time talking about is this idea around trust that you've
Mm,
presented in the book,
mm,
and leading on from trust or being able to build that foundation. Part of that is that you talk a lot about in the book, and we've talked a lot about in book club, is this notion of really being able to understand and identify your niche so that you know who you're talking to and how you're going to actually build up these connections. And
mm,
something that's come up quite a lot in our discussions has been the fear around being specific with your niche,
Yeah.
because there's that fear that if I am too tight with who I identify as my client or my customer, I'm going to miss out on the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Um, what's your take on that?
Well, fear is a nasty little bugger
Mm,
because fear to me is best defined as an irrational response to the unknown.
mm-hmm.
And so the best way to eliminate fear is to define it, is to make
Yeah.
the unknown known, is to
Mm-hmm.
rationalize it. Our brains jump into fear mode, not because they should be in fear mode most of the time. It's because we haven't figured out yet what we should fear or what we shouldn't fear or what the real problem is or isn't. And so we go to all of these insane places. I mean, this is a very evolutionary thing. Um,
Uh-huh.
Fear is something that was built into us when we lived on the savannah and had to run away
Mm-hmm.
from lions. Well, now we generally don't move over the course of a day,
Yeah.
and so our brains have to jump to places,
Yeah.
and often
Yeah.
that's fear and emotion. So anyway, have you done the math?
So go on, go
How many
on.
customers do you need?
Mm-hmm. I
Right?
love that answer. Right.
How many customers do you need? How much do you charge for customer? What's your lifetime value? Ballpark it if you don't know exactly what it is. Um, is it completely unreasonable to think that there's that many people that exist within your 1% uniqueness
Yeah.
factor that I
Right.
talk about in the book?
Right.
My guess is objectively, very clearly, the answer is yes. There are so many more people that exist in that little space than you'd need. It's actually quite silly. And it is easier, faster, cheaper, and more efficient with less embedded bullshit to access them than it is to try to somehow get the attention of a bigger audience.
Mm-hmm.
And so the only step that really needs to be made is just to be okay with that. Knowing that if somebody comes in who doesn't fit that and you can still serve them, sure, do it.
Yeah.
Um, but when it comes to designing a marketing plan, I mean, that's insane. Like
Yeah.
everything big started small.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Everything.
Yes.
Nike started with Phil Knight selling running shoes out of the trunk of his Plymouth Valiant.
Right.
Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki started with him selling copies out of a relative's car wash. Everything big starts small.
Right.
If it's good, it will naturally spread much bigger.
Right.
And you can do some things at that point to amplify it if you
Yes.
decide you want to, or you can be happy with a smaller, more profitable business. I mean, this is like what the business coaches don't tell you is that most businesses that make $1 million take home more profit than most businesses that make $5 million. But that's a whole nother
Right.
conversation.
Exactly. Exactly.
So my answer to you, Leanne, is have you run the numbers? Have you defined it? Like, and if you have run the numbers and it is true that there are not enough people that you can access easily within that market, go one step deeper, go one step farther, right? Um,
Excellent. Totally agree. Totally agree. And usually there is far more potential customers than we actually realize. And we've talked a lot about this, as I've just mentioned in the group, and also about the opportunity to really become an expert in
mm,
that niche and to really understand that niche deep, to really get in
yeah.
and understand it really well. The other
Like,
thing you
who are you
talk,
obsessed with? Like,
yeah,
I'm obsessed with, for whatever reason, I'm obsessed with books and authorship
yeah,
as a vocation and the business of selling books. And um, I'm about to start a LinkedIn newsletter about like a pop-up LinkedIn newsletter about books. Like I
right,
want to attract other authors into my ecosystem.
right,
Um, that's a, that's a tiny market, but
right.
like it's actually pretty big,
And
you know?
yeah, it is. Yeah, that's exactly right. And look, to extend that to you, sort of, you really do present the argument in the book also that says it's not even just about your ideal client, but it's about the people that you get to nerd out with and that you connect with. And that's where you build those relationships.
Yeah.
That's a really good, cool concept that you've covered there, because I've not read that in another business
Mm,
strategy book before. And I actually think, if I'm honest, some of us in book club are struggling to get that idea. We keep thinking, I've got to go to other business, or I've got to think about business. You're not saying that, are you, Jonathan? You're saying if you really like going to cosplay expos, then go to cosplay expos and meet other people that then may actually be interested in what you do and who you are. They're not necessarily those business people in your immediate business
yeah.
ecosystem, but they're connected to you in other ways.
I mean, if I sold a product, let me just make up a random name here. If I sold a product called Billy Goat Soap, for example, and I loved cosplay,
Hmm.
yeah, cosplayers really want nice, smooth skin, don't they? Um,
Right,
I mean, also, like, that's like a great, like, you could just dress up as Billy Goat. Like, what a great, like, you would crush it in that world.
yeah,
Um, yes, for sure. I mean, that's where things start. It's
right,
not necessarily where things grow. And because you're naturally interested in it, you're going to have more energy. You're going to be able to speak to people in more depth. You're going to share uncommon commonalities with them. And it's going to fire you up
right.
in a way that
Yeah,
otherwise wouldn't. I mean, I'm doing this with authors. Like, I'm connecting authors. I'm hosting a lot of meals and dinners. I've flown to New York already 3 times. I'm going again next week, for my fourth time this summer already, just to meet
yeah,
people. Uh, and God, I'm geeking out on this. I'm meeting my heroes, quite
right, right,
literally, and I've done it all in a matter of 2 months. I've actually accomplished more network wise, career wise, in a completely new field where I had no reputation in
right.
2 months by just focusing on this one audience and going deep and trying to connect people within that audience than most people do in 10 years.
Right.
And it's because I've focused on it. I mean, I'm this week alone, I've had multiple phone calls with people who, I kid you not, 2 months ago were my heroes.
Uh-huh.
And now we're just like talking as buddies.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's really quite amazing. And this is what happens once you allow yourself to indulge that part of you, because energy is contagious.
yeah,
Like, I can't fake for long enough to make it matter how much I just deeply love this shit.
yeah, right,
I can't fake
right.
that. And that people read that energy on you. If you're doing like a lunch and learn at like an HR of Procter and Gamble, like my buddies who are, big authors and big speakers, and they're talking to me about how to get big speaking contracts for corporate gigs. Like, one guy was telling me the other day of like how he's getting these sponsors for 6 figures to sponsor his content. I'm like, I don't want to be I don't want to be taking a plane to Connecticut to go speak to Procter and Gamble marketing experts. I don't care how much you're paying me. Like, that sounds miserable. Like, I'd rather own nothing and like go speak to Arthur Brooks and like have breakfast with him.
Yeah,
you
right,
know.
right. Yep, right. And I
So what are you
think
doing?
too, yeah, and I think people sense that level of authenticity and connection, genuineness, don't they? And that's an essential part, like you say in your book, familiarity. Thanks for that word, by the way. I find I struggle with that word.
It's a hard word for Australians.
It's hard.
It's you know what it is? It's humanity. It's
Yeah,
humanity.
right.
What are we if not outrageously obsessed with something that most other people could not give two shits about? What
Yeah.
are we if not for that? I mean, all of us have one or two things that we know in our deepest heart of hearts are really silly to care about as much as we care about.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And there's a genuineness in that that comes across, I think, when you meet other
Yeah,
people that share that. They know that.
totally.
We can
Totally.
totally read
And
that.
if they share that and nobody in their life that like they go day to day with shares that, oh man, yo, now you just bypassed all of the other things that were competing for their time and their attention
Yeah.
and became fast friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's amazing to me how quickly
Yeah.
this happens.
Yeah. That's totally agree. Totally agree. And so let's move on to a next bit that kind of sent me back to my corporate days. So way
Okay.
back before dinosaurs roamed the earth, I was a corporate trainer. So I taught commercial sales
Hmm.
to a newspaper group called Fairfax. So you said you've spent some time in Australia. So I don't know if you ever read the Age newspaper. I'm going to show my age here. You can read it online. Sydney Morning Herald, BRW,
I
a whole range of.
don't think I read
No, you probably
newspapers when I
don't.
was there. I went to see a lot. I ate a lot of meat pies. I went to see a lot of footy games. I went to a
Did
lot of
you?
backyard like fires and
Yeah,
bonfires and
yeah, yeah.
stuff.
Yeah,
I
probably
bartended illegally and spilt beer on people because I'm not good at bartending. It's
not.
about what I did there.
That's
And
all
then I
right. I'll
studied
let
sport. And then I
yeah,
studied sport.
yeah, yeah, fair enough. I'll let you off the
Yeah.
newspaper thing. But
Yeah.
anyway, my point is, as a commercial trainer, we spend a lot of time talking about the difference between features and benefits, right? And
Mm.
that clients like to buy based on solution and solving their problem and taking their pain away. They're not necessarily interested in the shiny new thing that's, packaged in the actual product or the service. It's have you helped me feel better or do something different or be better as a result? And you spend a lot of time talking about that. So I guess, and because I was working in that field so long ago, it
Hmm.
feels almost like a conversation that we're still having. We're still having.
Of
Like you
course we
said,
are.
people buy on benefit and justify on feature later on.
I
Really,
mean,
that's the cold hard truth. Why are we still having these conversations?
you want to know what the other cold hard truth is, Leanne?
No. Yes, tell me.
Basically nothing new matters
Mm,
when you really dial down to it. Now, there may be new technologies that can amplify things you're doing, but without a good strategy, it's completely irrelevant. And
mhm.
strategy is always based off of foundational truths that have not changed for a very long period of time. I
Right.
mean, in the fitness industry, the first ever viral article that I ever wrote, this is back in 2009, I think, maybe 2010, was an article called Does Fruit Make Me Fat?
Uh huh. Uh huh.
People are still writing articles about that. The answer is no, by the way.
Yeah.
But people, I mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't, the depth of the things that matter don't change.
Mm.
Um, that's why the majority of books that you read should be at least 10 years old, probably 30 or 40 or 50.
Yep. Totally. Totally get
Um,
it. Yes, and exactly have that.
and that's why anything that's new and getting a lot of attention right now, I'm not saying should be ignored, but should be looked at through a keen filter of how can this amplify the core of what I'm doing, not how do I jump to this and change what I'm doing as a result of it.
Mm. Yeah, that's an interesting question to ask yourself in terms amplify versus change,
Mm,
because that's another discussion I think that's come out of revisit. Well, for me, revisiting. For some members of the group, it's the same, and for others, it's a new idea. But coming across this idea of like solving a customer's problem or understanding what their pain is and answering that.
yeah.
Um, and actually, yeah, amplify is a good word for it, because we've also had discussions about, for example, a website. If we look at the front page of a product-based website, would it be more useful to actually talk about what the customer's problem is
Yeah.
and therefore the solution that you have to that problem? Or is it more useful to just list the product and all the wonderful features that make it
Mm,
unique
mm.
on the website? Do you see the difference there?
Yeah, I mean, you can list the features, but you've got to connect them to a benefit. And
Yeah, that's
so
right.
you can list the features of what your product does or what you do, so long as you talk about why it matters to the person. And you might not know that. I mean, I'm I'm
Mm.
doing a lot of deep research for my next book, and like this is just a little document I put together. But the the hard part is the real deep work behind the scenes that nobody sees, and also that's kind of hard to talk about, particularly hard to talk about in short social media superficial snippets where the beginning and the end are cut off. It there's a difference between what information gets a lot of attention, especially today, versus what information really matters. And because the stuff that is more superficial and easier to talk about, like
Mm-hmm.
how do you A B test like a thumbnail on a video,
Yeah.
it doesn't mean that it is more important. Doesn't mean it doesn't
Mm.
matter at all ever, but it doesn't mean that it's more important. It simply means it's easier to talk about in a
Yeah.
very short, quick hit period of time to deceive you into thinking that you're making some progress. And the deep work behind the scenes that anybody who's achieved anything has done is really understood the customer deeply.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so, you know, I've given a lot of thought and spoken to a lot of people who have looked at an early copy of my next book about, who do I want to seed copies to? Basically, who do I want to like make sure who's the ideal reader that I really want to get copies into their hand, whether they're an
Right.
influencer or not. It's just like they're and
Yeah.
and so it's basically a professional, probably somebody who has done not just continuing education but like a postgraduate degree, has worked in
Right.
a professional career, but now is a side gig, right?
Yeah.
And so I was like, actually,
Right.
teachers who have like a baking thing on the side or whatever,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
for a whole host of reasons, are like, and there's a lot of them, um, are perfect. And my book also talks about seasonality a lot and teaching as a seasonal profession.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, who would I know? So my son's old kindergarten teacher, her name is Miss Best, of all
Mm-hmm.
names. Her name is actually Miss Best. Um, just a beautiful soul through and through. And she like has a side business where she decorates cookies.
Right. Right.
Right?
Right.
Of course she
Yeah.
does. And so she's actually coming over to our house today because it's like 10 o'clock in the morning to do
Yeah.
art with my wife. Because my wife has like 10 women coming over to tie-dye stuff because that's what
Yeah.
my wife does, which is cool. And I have a series of questions to ask her because I was like, oh, she's somebody in my life who fits this mold exactly. And it's as simple as like, I want to know what stage of life you're in. Are you married? Are you engaged? Do you have kids? I
Yeah.
want to know pain points. What frustrates you about your job and your lifestyle right now? I want to know what you read, who you listen to, what books, what blogs, who is there behind the scenes that are like micro influencers that you like listen to. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to them and then I'm going to track those rabbit holes back and I'm
Yeah.
going to look who else is listening to them to get more Miss Bess into my life.
Right. Yeah.
And so, how much of that work have you done? Those are the people you seed your product or service to. Those are the
Yeah.
people you build connections to. And that's the blue ocean.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Nobody's
Yeah.
reaching out to a a, a teacher who teaches kindergarten in a suburb of Toronto who happens to run a little cookie decorating side hustle that has 250 followers on Instagram. Nobody's reaching out to them and being like, "Yo, I noticed you. Can I send you a free copy of my next book?"
Yeah. 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 Very interesting. And okay, so let's look. We are going to have to wrap up in just a moment. So I want to finish with this because I've thought about it a lot as I've read the book. So you've been
Mm,
very passionate about. You've presented a very good argument about connecting locally, family and friends. Like famous to the family. We understand that broad concept,
mm,
and being able to work your. You gave an example of like you've got you're at a gym and you've got all these people actually they're exercising, have you walked outside and actually talked to anybody directly as opposed to your
That's a
Instagram
real
followers?
story. Isn't that
Yeah, yeah.
insane?
It reads as a real story too,
Isn't
actually, by
isn't
the
that
way.
insane
It is
that
insane.
like that actually happened? And that type of thing, there was another story in the book that I didn't share, which was I was brought in to speak to um, the 14 district managers for Good Life Fitness. Good Life Fitness runs about 85% of all of the personal training in Canada. They've got just a
Uh-huh.
monopoly on the country. And so
Right.
these 14 district managers were effectively in charge of about 85% of all personal trainers in Canada.
Uh-huh.
And I was brought in, a friend of mine runs the nationwide trainers there. So he brought me into their annual meeting and wanted me to talk about content and brand and stuff like that to them. And it was basically the exact same conversation with them
Right. Right.
as that gym. I eliminated the story because it was redundant, but it's wild how common
Right.
that is. It's like
Right.
literally open the door.
Mm. Yeah, right. Exactly. Exactly. And it's one of the reasons why I picked the obvious choice to talk about in this round of book club is because the people that are in book club are wonderful micro business owners. They either work for themselves, they've got a small group that work for
Mm-hmm.
them, and they're very active in their local community. So
Yeah.
being connected to community is actually the source of business. So they're
Mm,
active networkers, they're out there. Using your community is actually the point of success, as opposed to trying, as you've said, try to beat the algorithm. Now, this is what I have to put to you though. So every
yeah.
time I read a LinkedIn post that you've put up, or maybe there's something on, social media or something from you, I find myself thinking, gee, how does he find that balance between this very strong argument that says, forget the algorithms,
Yeah.
go and walk the floor and make some conversations. But here I am. I'm
Yeah.
sending you newsletters. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm doing Insta posts, but I'm telling you in my book, go out and walk the floor.
Right.
So how do you find that balance between both?
So it took me about 6 months after The Obvious Choice came out to actually really figure out what the book was about, which
Uh-huh.
is a whole different problem.
Yeah.
Big mistake, by the way, when you're trying to figure out how to position the book. The Obvious Choice is a book about figuring out what game you're playing
Uh-huh.
in business. And then once you know what game you're playing, the rules of the game are pretty easy to find out.
Uh-huh.
The game of trying to win the internet is a very different game than the game of trying to win in business, particularly if you're a local or small business, right?
Mm.
Even if you have ambitions of becoming a big business,
Yeah.
um, it's a very different game. I'm playing a different game right now
Uh-huh.
than the people who I wrote The Obvious Choice for.
Right. Yep.
My success in all my businesses was built on the principles that The Obvious Choice is written on. I've now evolved into attempting to navigate stage 4 of that content cycle,
Right.
where the game that I'm playing now is to try to become an international thought leader
Right.
and well respected writer.
Yep.
That is a fundamentally different game than the game of, yo, I just need a few customers, man.
Yep.
It is a game that has much longer time horizons, has much lower odds of success, has outsized reward mechanisms for a chosen few,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
with almost nothing in the middle, and then a whole lot of people who are working really hard trying to break through. The Obvious Choice is, how do you reliably do well? The
Mm-hmm.
game that I'm playing is, how do I try to become one of the best in the world?
Uh-huh. So
Totally different.
would you say you've stepped through those stages? So you started at the obvious choice foundationally.
Totally.
You started with that strategy, and then as that's worked and allowed you to grow, then it's a new strategy for a new game now.
Yeah. If you decide to play a different game, that's fine. So long as you knowingly understand the rules of that game and you're willing to play them. And you can't just have one thing without the other.
Mm,
Um, I started as a local personal trainer at a small boutique personal training studio in Toronto.
yeah,
Then I self published a book with no audience, with no platform, with no money when I
yeah,
was 24 years old. I took overnight buses
yeah.
7 to 10 times a summer to New York City to meet
Uh-huh.
people, to shake hands. I slept on my friend's floor. And I shook hands and I handed out physical copies of the book. And I started a blog before it was easy to start a blog. And I started publishing other people on the blog after my full day of clients. And slowly but surely, I was able to build up a reputation amongst my community. I started to become famous to the personal trainer family.
Right. Yep.
And then slowly but surely, as I had more success with business and started speaking about it, I started building up a reputation amongst people who were more interested in particularly coaching businesses.
Yes.
And now what I'm doing is attempting to make a bigger step. And it's been hard.
Right.
Reputation, I've discovered, is highly contextual.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's it's been really, really hard. And it
Mm-hmm.
will take me a very long period of time. The game that I'm playing, the game that I talk about in The Obvious Choice is a game that can be won in 6 months.
Right.
The game that I'm playing right now takes decades.
Uh-huh. Makes sense then.
As long as you knowingly sign up for that, it's pretty fun to
Yep.
play.
Yep. Excellent. That makes perfect sense. It makes perfect sense. That's excellent. So is there anything that you really want to share with us,
No, this was
Thomas?
fun. And it's like 12:30 at night, so you got to get to bed and
That's
sleep
right.
in tomorrow.
I do. I
Um,
do.
but I would love for you to send me a picture of the front of your book with all those tags. That would be
I
awesome.
definitely
And
will
then what was
tomorrow.
it called? Yeah, no, do it tomorrow. What was it called? You said the summaries and the
They're,
what's the
so they're called cheat sheets. They're summaries of each of your chapters, and then the second part is business prompts. And so we actually have a community platform. So in fact, let me just say thanks very much. I'll stop the recording. Here we go.
Thanks everybody.
Thanks.